Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home. Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
Welcome to the Free Birth Society podcast. This is a radical space for women who are ready to celebrate their autonomous choices in birth, motherhood, and beyond. Together, we'll learn about wild birth through personal narrative, we'll explore the politics of birth, and we'll analyze everything that relates to our lives as women from a feminist perspective. Here's your host, Emily Saldea.
It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
Today on the show, we have the beautiful Mallory, who birthed her first child in the hospital with an epidural. Mallory shares how much pain she was in postpartum, both physically and emotionally. She then has a second birth in the hospital, but this time with no epidural and hardly any interventions. And it was in her declining everything the hospital had to offer that she realized she didn't need to birth her children there ever again.
So, I never thought about being a mom or birthing. I was never a baby person. And it's just so funny because once I became pregnant for the first time, it all rushed into my being, I guess. It was just all of a sudden all about pregnancy, all about, what kind of mom I was going to be, and just all about, how I was going to raise my kids and all that. But my first birth was in 2010. We had insurance. I went to the OB. It was very standard, very typical. Looking back on it, it was not. It was, bad, I guess, considering my fourth birth, But it was very standard. I went to all my appointments. They did all the checks. I didn't really research much. I didn't have to because my doctor was in charge of my pregnancy and, whatever. And I live in a relatively small town. And so none of the trendy, I don't mean trendy in a bad term, but doulas were not popular. Midwives were not popular. I don't even think I really knew what either of those things were. There were midwives at the practice, but, just a couple of things that kind of stick out with my first birth was the midwife or a midwife at that practice really pushed the flu shot on me. And we aren't doctor people. We didn't run to the doctor for everything. We never got flu shots or, any of that. But she was highly offended that I refused the flu shot. And my husband was with me at that appointment. And, we were very adamant, but afterwards that just really stuck with me. It's I'm expressing no, and she would not let up. And so I was okay, that's just kind of weird. Mm-hmm. And the fact that she was a midwife, I was I thought they were kind of supposed to be a little bit more women centered, but fast forward to that birth, it was in the hospital. I wanted to try and do it, without an epidural. And it was totally because I wanted the trophy. It was not, because I wanted to embrace birth. My mind was not thinking that way at all yet at that point. I went in there, the lights were on, the room was crowded, people in and out. My mom and my mother-in-law and my husband were there. And, everybody's just kind of chatting and, I'm trying to focus on contractions. I didn't really prepare in any way, no, hypnobirthing, breathing techniques, nothing like that to help me cope with the pain. I was just, all right, let's go, I ended up asking for the epidural just because it got, too unbearable. I pushed for probably 2 hours. They had me start pushing around 8 centimeters. Yeah. And I remember I'm laying in bed. I have the epidural. I can't feel a thing. So they're like, push when you feel pressure. I'm like, I can't feel pressure. I don't know. Like, what am I had no idea. And so they're like coaching me to push. And every time I pushed, I could feel the nurse like stretching my perineum with her fingers.
Ugh.
And totally normal. That's what's supposed to happen. So I didn't think anything of it. Avery was born about 2 hours later, and I was just so exhausted. I remember asking, I was like, I'm not gonna be able to finish this if I can't have something to eat. Like, I have no energy left. And the nurse is just like, I'm sorry, we can't let you have anything. And so my husband found like some candy in my purse, and I like had to sneak it, but just that, yeah, it was looking back, I'm like, that was horrible. That was absolutely horrible. Sex after Avery's birth was painful for probably a solid year. Like, I don't even know if I got an episiotomy. I tore. I don't know if it was a natural tear or if they cut me, but I mean, it was just, and thinking back, I feel like I was holding trauma there. That's why it took so long for sex to be comfortable because of what I had gone through. And I didn't realize that at the time, but just, learning more and being able to process what had happened, I know that now. But my second birth, my daughter, I had done a ton more research, still nowhere to the level of discovering, unassisted or free birthing. But I made a birth plan. I was so excited about it. I was like, I'm not wearing the hospital gown. I'm not doing IVs. I'm not doing an epidural. I'm laboring in the tub. Like, I was so excited. I was like, this birth is going to be so much better. And I remember bringing that. I typed out my birth plan, and I remember I brought it into the one of my doctor's appointments, and I handed it to him, and I was just like, here, I have a birth plan. And he kind of looked at it, and he was like, well, I mean, we could put it in your file here, but just bring it to the hospital. And I was just like, okay, so you're not going to ask me about it. We're not going to talk about it. You don't want to, I was just like, okay. And so that like totally took the wind out of my sails. I was like, so you're not educating yourself.
You don't care.
Yeah, you don't care.
Yeah.
Like, so, what I want to happen, you don't care. But in the hospital, the labor was much better. I stayed in the tub the whole time and drastically reduced pain. I ended up birthing without an epidural, which I was so happy. I was like, I'm never getting an epidural again, ever again. It was a horrible decision. And that was actually the first birth that I experienced the fetal ejection reflex. And I don't even know if I knew what that was at the time, but like it was just amazing. Like almost like everything went into slow motion as she was birthing. And I felt like every movement, I felt the crowning, there was no ring of fire. It wasn't everything that I had prepared myself for, the pain, it was drastically less. With my third, it was very similar. I didn't even type up a birth plan that time. So I was like, they don't care. So I don't care. I'm just going to, nope, not doing this, nope. I had a ton more confidence. All of my doctor's appointments were me just like going in there and be like, do we have to do this? Do we have to do this? And they're like, well, no, as far as like checks and, measuring fundal height and the, little Dopplers. I'm like, is that necessary? Like, can I just go, And by the end of that pregnancy, it was just very clear that I didn't need anything they had to offer, and I hate that it took me 3 births to really find that confidence. And I'm not speaking for all women. This is just me, but like, I didn't need any of that. My body didn't need any of that. I believe that women don't need any of that, whether or not other women, believe that themselves. It's a journey. It definitely is. Cause I went down that journey for sure. But I mean, the birth, oh gosh. I was in the tub and they were like trying to check me in the tub. And the nurse is like, baby, I got to check you. I got to let the doctor know, how many centimeters you are. And I'm thinking, I'm like, can't I tell you like when I'm starting to feel labor happen or, the birth happen? Like it was just so painful. And I remember just like practically begging, like, please don't, it hurts so bad. Like, baby, I have to. And I hate when people my age refer to me as, baby or honey or whatever.
That's disgusting.
I'm like, I'm not your baby. I'm not your honey. Like, just stop it. And I know it's a Southern thing and some people just get the habit, but just that stuck out in my mind. It's like, I'm not lesser than you. I don't know. I just felt lesser with all of those births. So I got out of the tub because legally, you're not allowed to birth in the water. And
it's not a law.
Well, I know that. Yeah.
It's not like they don't, no legislation gives a shit enough about us to write that into the law anyway. It's just a hospital preference. Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. Like all of these things, like if I literally just started pushing and gave birth in the tub, like, what are you going to arrest me? Right. It's not illegal, but during that, him coming out, I started to feel the fetal ejection reflex, and I wanted to, for whatever reason, I was really conscious on not wanting to tear. Like I wanted to do this pregnancy very slow, or do that birth very slow and controlled, and on my time. Like I didn't want any push coaching or anything like that. And so that was the first time that I wasn't like laid back on the table. I was kind of sitting up a little bit. And my legs were together. Like I didn't want to stretch them out. I wanted them to be together. And he was coming out, and one of the nurses kept trying to pull my leg up in the stirrup, one of my legs. And I would pull it back down. And like, he's literally coming out when she's doing this. And I put it back down. She yanked my leg back up to try and put it in the stirrups. And I go, no, like in between pushing. And by that time he was out, and I'm just like, what are you doing? Like my leg being in, that's not necessary. And like, I get so just frustrated because thinking back to how a lot of those things went down. And I was just like, man, I wish I had the power now within myself and the confidence, looking back at that girl who was birthing, being, for lack of a better word, pushed around, told what to do. I don't know, like each of those taught me something, and it's healing, being able to like rehash it out and identify things that made me uncomfortable. And, cause I've got 2 daughters now, so I don't want them to have to go through that, but let's see, third birth, that was that. And so I was like, okay, I did 2 births without an epidural. I thought that was, good. We were done with kids, or so we thought. And I never like tracked my period. I was kind of wild in that way. Like I didn't pay much attention to it. So as far as like knowing when I was fertile, no idea, we did the pull out method. I was very confident in that. And I had always wanted like 4 or more kids. Like I said before, I was never a kid person. I never thought about, the amount of kids I was going to have. I never thought about names, which was so interesting because, I never, ever had names picked out, or, girl names, boy names, or whatever. And each one of my kids' names were given to me from the other side. It was so cool. So Jaylee, that's my first daughter. We had a really hard time deciding on a name. Like for whatever reason, that was my first daughter. So I was like, it has to be perfect. She's, my angel princess. Like I can't pick the wrong name. She has to have the most perfect name. And leading up to the birth, we still didn't have a name picked out. And the night I went into labor, I woke up from a dream, and I woke up and I'm like, her name's Jaylee. That's her name. Like it came to me in a dream. It came to me, from the other side, I guess. And the same with Beckett. That's my second son. And then Cully, our fourth daughter, the free birth baby, like I want to say the day or so after I found out I was pregnant, her name just popped in my head. So I'm like, she totally gave me her name. Like
That's awesome.
It was, looking back, everything was so meant to be. But yeah, so we find out we're pregnant with Cully. Cole, my husband, is in total shock. He's like, just went into panic mode just because, he's the guy and kids are expensive and whatever. And so it took a little bit for him to kind of digest that. And from the very beginning, I knew, I was like, okay, we're not doing the hospital thing. I'm not doing it. And I had no idea of free birthing. I had I want to say, I thought it was probably illegal. Like I didn't think you could legally birth without anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, I'm just going to sit on that for a little bit. I'm not going to try and stress about it. We found out we were pregnant at 4 or 5 weeks, really early. So I was like, we've got plenty of time. And I started calling around to all of the doctor's offices or the OBs in my town because I just wanted to see what my options were as far as prenatal care. And every single one of them, I explained, I plan on birthing at home, but I would like an appointment or two. I knew I wanted to find out the gender. So, I needed to figure out how to get an ultrasound to find that out. Not one office would see me.
Wow.
And I after the first one that I called, she's like, the lady I talked to, she's like, well, we have, we'll go by your insurance. And do, the whole insurance plan, but you have to do all or nothing. So basically, even if I decide to not birth in the hospital, I still have to pay the full amount as if I birthed in the hospital, which that's the most expensive freaking part, And so I was like, I'm not going to do that. But every single office, and I probably called like 5 or 6, I had looked into, by that time, I was starting to really Google midwives and doulas and birthing centers. And there was a birthing center maybe an hour and a half away. And it was, insurance wasn't accepted there. It was, pay out of pocket. And it didn't feel right. It was an hour and a half away. Everything I read said that you could still possibly be transferred to the hospital. And so I was like, well, that's staying away from that. And eventually we found one midwife who worked independently in town. And a friend of mine was pregnant around the same time that I was. She delivered before me, but she ended up using that midwife. And so I was like, okay, so, we'll see how everything works out with you with the home birth. And then, if you're happy with that midwife, then we'll end up using her. And, so we took our time though. I wasn't rushed to, interview or do a consultation and, whatever. I was maybe 4 or 5 months along when I actually called her to set up a consultation. She came to the house and, she was very nice and she looked around and she's like, yeah, looks like a great place to have a baby. I'm excited. And, we're like, yeah. And, she's, just telling us the rundown. All the appointments would be basically the same frequency as if I were to go to an OB. She, runs all the tests, does all the tests, same Group B strep, which I tested positive for Group B strep with my first son and did, the whole antibiotics, all that. And I think this was a decision that was made between me and my doctor. And I had the same doctor for all 3 births. And the decision was made that, he kind of explained that Group B strep can come and go and, you can test positive once and then retest and be negative and whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So to play it safe, what we decided to do was to just receive the antibiotics with each birth. I didn't even get tested. Because
my God, that's so crazy.
Yeah. Now looking back, I'm like, how could you even think that's okay?
Well, I mean, yeah, I get it though from
from a
that
doctor's standpoint,
perspective, it's, you know, it's kind of in the same vein of like, let's just C-section everyone at 36 weeks
exactly.
and not even wait around for normal birth. Yeah. Like let's just throw antibiotics on every mom and baby because somebody might slip through the cracks. And regardless of the fact that antibiotics actually kill babies.
Yes.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And, you know, by that time or by my fourth birth, I had started to do a little bit of research about how it just kills all the gut flora that they're, you know, going through whenever you're birthing them. And like, they're just covered in all that good bacteria and the antibiotics just take it all away. And I'm just like, I was so just disappointed, you know, looking back. I'm like, I should have just gotten tested and who knows, it would have been negative. But I think about that and I'm like, even if it would have been negative, I probably would have been scared into receiving the antibiotics anyway, you know, so whatever. I mean, but with my fourth birth, or my fourth pregnancy, it was in the back of my mind. You know, I was wrestling with, should I try and get tested? Should I, you know, I don't know. And it's crazy, all the home tests you can buy online and just have delivered to your door, and you can test yourself for all kinds of crazy things. It was amazing. Like I really kind of got immersed into the underground, like medical universe, I guess. Like it's funny what all you can really get your hands on, you know, if you want to stay out of doctors' offices or kind of, you know, take care of yourself in that way. But so anyway, there were a few things, you know, Group B strep was one of them that I wanted to just, you know, either get tested or find out what to do about that. I knew I wanted an ultrasound to find out the gender. Still hadn't done a whole lot of research on, you know, the dangers of that. But so it was like there were these things that I was holding on to that went along with the industrialized birthing system that I hadn't figured out how to let go of yet. And so that was why, you know, using a midwife I was taking that into consideration because, you know, I still hadn't learned that I didn't need anyone. I hadn't fully embraced that yet. But anyway, we met with the midwife. She came, we did the consultation, the whole spiel. She told us you know, her prices. And the whole time I'm just like, I wish she would just do like an a la carte thing, you know? And I think I asked her at the consultation, I was like, do we have to do all of these appointments? Do I have to get checked for all of these things? And, you know, can I just like pay you to attend my birth? Like, that's what I wanted. I wanted a birth keeper, you know? I just wanted someone to be there to kind of, to lean on and to, you know, watch me and help me if I needed it. Like, that's all I wanted is just women support, I guess. Which I just love that you've created this whole radical birth keeping school that offers just that. Like, that's what women want. They just want someone to be there with them. They don't want to be governed or controlled. They just, you know, they want just love and support. And that's what I was looking for. I just wasn't finding it. Everything was a dead end. I tried searching around for doulas. I emailed a couple in the area, just never got an email back. Like, everything was a dead end. So I was like, you know what? This is the universe telling me, do this on your own. You can do it. And that was kind of my mantra. Like, the whole time I just declared to the universe that, you know, I am a woman. Women give birth, women have babies, all is well. Like, it was just, I was very protective of my mental space, my mental energy. We didn't tell a whole lot of people at all what we planned on doing because I didn't want to hear what they had to say because I knew they had not done the research that I had done. I mean, we were both just very protective. And Cole, my husband, like, we were on the same page from the beginning. Like, we had peace with the path we were going from the very beginning. So I didn't have to deal with anything, you know, coming from him because, you know, we were very on the same page looking back with how all the births went. And, you know, he was eager to learn and listen to me tell him what I had learned. So that was so nice having a supportive husband because, you know, it was new territory and very taboo, for lack of a better word. This was back in 2017 that we were, I was pregnant. Cully was born in 2018.
Hey women, Emily here, popping in to let you know that we are currently open for enrollment for the Radical Birthkeeper School. This is an online intensive, authentic midwifery course that is jam-packed with an insane amount of critical information. We also guide you week by week to launch or rebrand your birth business, and we dive deep into the self-mastery tools that you hear me talk about here on this show. If you're ready for a transformational 12 weeks with integrated and long-form mentorship, join us and step up to serve women in full embodied integrity. Classes begin March 1st, so head over to www.radicalbirthkeeperschool.com and invest in up-leveling your birth business and leadership skills, all in a container of radical sisterhood. See you soon.
So we kind of decided to table the whole midwife thing for a little bit and just sit on it and see, just if anything else came up. I didn't want to stress about it. And so we did that, and the midwife had planned to go out of town for Christmas or New Year's or something. And I think we were going out of town too at that point. So we're like, well, let's just, chill out for now, and we'll circle back after the first of the year and just, see where everybody's at. And so we did that. And after the first of the year, I texted her and I was like, I'm going to try one more time and just see. Like, I literally, all I want is an ultrasound and for someone just to sit there at the birth in case like something happens. Like, that's all I want. I don't want to go to the hospital. I just want someone who knows more than I do to sit with me and reassure me and, just help me if I needed it. And so I texted her asking that. I was like, is there any way, I'll pay extra, it's not, raise your price per appointment or raise your like a la carte birthing price. Like I just don't need all of it. And I can't remember her exact words, but it was basically, well, these were her exact words, and I still have the text on an old phone. She said, birthing at home is a luxury. And I was just like, what? So for centuries upon centuries, all these women who birthed at home, like that's a luxury. That those words, I was just like, okay, this seals the deal for me right now, because it just wasn't in alignment with what I was wanting to hear. But she said, birthing at home is a luxury. I would suggest try to get on Medicaid, and they will pay for a midwife at an OB 100%, and you won't have to worry about like a la carte services or whatever. And so I was just like, okay, that just seals it right there. Obviously a midwife isn't the route that I want to go. That was literally the only midwife in my area. So, I mean, it was a weight off of our shoulders in some sense, because it was like, okay, that makes our decision for us.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, from then on, I just enjoyed the pregnancy. I didn't have to worry about appointments. I didn't have to worry about childcare, for my kids, dragging them to appointments. It was just very low maintenance. And my mom, because I wanted her to be at the birth, and I knew that it would not be comfortable for her at all learning that we were going to have an unassisted birth. And I called it unassisted up until that point because that was the only vocabulary I had learned, through Googling and watching YouTube. And I had not found your Instagram page yet at that point. I had not found your podcast yet at that point. And so the term unassisted that's a scary word, but you're not unassisted. Like, I've heard you mention and other women mentioned before, like you have your ancestors, you have the wisdom inside your body. You're not birthing unassisted. Like you're very, very assisted.
Totally.
But I was just very nervous to tell my mom, and she would be like, so how's, the midwife hunt go? Have you found a doctor that you can birth with yet? And I had like tried to drop little hints like, oh, I don't know. We're kind of, we're definitely going to do it at home. I don't know if we're going to have a midwife yet or not. And I could tell she had a lot of fear. She was respectful of me, like not wanting to project her fear. Like I could tell that's kind of where she stood. And so we didn't really talk about it a whole lot. I want to say it was only like a week before Cully was born that we actually told everyone, or at least our parents, like not that we owed everyone an explanation, but those who were interested, and cared about us, we told them that we weren't going to have anyone there. It was just going to be us. And, of course, it was like, oh my God, you're crazy. You're like, what are you going to do if this happens? What are you going to do if this happens? And it's like, I've read about it. I've researched as much as I felt I needed to, just with, what if the baby's breech, and what if the cord's wrapped around her neck and whatever. And I don't know, we were just very at peace with our decision. We ended up finding a private sonogram place about an hour and a half away that would just do a quick 30-minute sonogram, nothing medical, no anatomy scan or anything. It was strictly like a gender reveal. And so I did that. We found out it was a girl. And a cool story with that, the sonogram technician, she was, moving around on my belly, and she got a really good profile view of Cully. And she was like pointing out that my placenta was above Cully. So Cully was like laying down looking up at it. And as soon as she said that, Cully reached her hand up and put her hand on my placenta and just like held it there. And the sonogram tech was like, oh my gosh, do you see that? And I was just like, yeah. And she's like, do you know what she's doing? She's like resting her hand on your placenta. It was so, to me, it was so intentional. She was in awe. She was like, I've never seen a baby do that. So just all these things were just very reassuring, like that Cully was communicating with me just as much as I was, praying and talking to her and just creating my reality, just little things like that. I was like, all right, baby girl, like we got it. We're a team. This is going to happen. You're on the same page as I am. And, I wasn't familiar with spirit babies or anything at that point. I guess I was, because, I knew what was going on, but like the term spirit babies, there's all these things I learned about and discovered and knew intuitively. But like, I didn't have the vocabulary to go with it yet at that point. It was, I don't know if that makes sense, but, but I mean, everything.
We know all this stuff instinctually anyway.
Yes, we do. And I feel like that was the journey for me with this pregnancy. Like, that's why the whole time, even though things probably should have felt scary about the decisions I was making, they weren't, because I really listened to myself. I listened to my body, I listened to my baby. I may not have realized it at the time, but she was communicating with, me, and I'm sure my husband felt it too. But like with every decision we made, we were so at peace. There was no.
And you also had already seen what the hospital had to offer you, and you were over it.
I was over it. And with every doubt we may have had, like, well, are we making the right decisions? What if this happens? What if this happens? Thinking about, okay, well, maybe we should consider birthing in the hospital. I instantly got a wrench in my gut. Like, hell no, that is the last place I want to be. So like, I really paid attention to that. Like, as if any fear crept in, the hospital was still more scary to me. I had experienced too much. I had seen too much. And during that pregnancy, I had visited a couple of friends and family who had had their babies in the hospital, and each one, something stuck out, or there was a story or something happened that just really reassured me, no, like that's not an option for us. So just little nuggets along the way, just kind of set it in for us, like this is what we're meant to do.
So tell me your story.
Yeah, so I knew I wanted this to be documented, so we hired a birth photographer, and we met with her, and I was like, well, I want to make sure you're comfortable with this. Like we're having it at home, we're having the baby at home, and there's not going to be anyone else there. And she was like, well, did you have a bad experience? I was like, well, I mean, I say yes. Most people would say it was normal, but she was like, I don't know if you know this or knew this, but I was a labor and delivery nurse for a long time before I started photography. And I was like, really? And that was one more thing that kind of just fell into place. I was like, well, you're hired. If you're cool with this, I'm cool with this. Let's go. Leading up to the birth, I had estimated my due date to be around June 24th. And that was a complete guess because, like I said, I never tracked my period. It was a total guess as to when my last period was before I got pregnant. I had always gone at least like 41 plus weeks with each baby. So I was comfortable with, 42, 43 week birth if it happened to go past June 24th. And it did. It was the 4th of July, and I had started just feeling mild contractions. I was leaking a little bit of fluid, like bloody mucus, and I had lost my mucus plug I know everybody loses their mucus plug, but I remember losing it. I know a lot of women don't notice it or whatever, but so I was like, oh, sweet, mucus plug is coming out, baby's on the way. But that went on for like 2 days, which was interesting because all of my births were like clockwork previously, where the mucus plug came out, we were in the hospital by midnight, the baby was born the next morning. And so this went on for 2 days, and I was like, great, the one that I'm doing by myself is a wild card. but I just went with it. Labor really started kicking in around 10 o'clock that night. We had gotten in bed, and I was going to try and get some sleep, but I had had a couple of pretty good contractions. So my husband and I got out of bed. I called my mom. I called the birth photographer to let her know. Our kids were fast asleep in their beds. It was just so nice because, in the past we would always have to call my parents, get them to come get the kids, wake the kids up. It was just one more thing that we had to worry about. And they were just tucked in their beds. And I had made a birth playlist. I turned that on and was just listening to music. I was kind of tidying up the bedroom. I put on a little bit of makeup. I was just like, all right, let's have a baby, like I was so excited about the birth pictures. We had set up a GoPro to film it, but we were just so caught up in the moment. We forgot to turn it on. And I'm so bummed about that because I would have loved to go back and watch, everything. But, I got in the tub, labored in the tub. I knew, that's where I wanted to be. So I didn't waste time getting in there. I was just relaxing. Contractions were, starting to get pretty intense, totally bearable though. The birth photographer showed up. Her and my mom are just kind of sitting on my bed. Cole is sitting there with water and just kind of, waiting, just, if I needed anything, if any of the kids woke up, he was just kind of on standby for whatever I needed. And it was almost like everything just happened in slow motion because it was so calm, so just peaceful. It was just insane. And I had one pretty good wave that like vibrated my whole body. My whole body like jittered. And I remember I was on my knees, and after that happened, I was like, whoa. And I felt my hand down there, and I felt her head. And I was like, no way. I was like, it's only been like an hour. Like,
Nice.
I could probably like go walk a mile right now. Like I hadn't been in enough pain, but that's what I had based everything on, because that's all I knew. Birth was incredibly painful. It was, tough to get through, to do it without meds. And so I was just like, this is crazy. Like, there's no way she's coming out right now. And so,
talk about rewriting your whole story, huh?
Yeah. And I told my mom, I was like, y'all don't go anywhere. Cause my mom was kind of like poking her head in the kids' rooms and just, walking around, just, whatever. And I was like, y'all stay close cause it's happening. And I pushed a couple of times. Her head came out. I had to get like repositioned and get comfortable. And looking back, I realized like I was like a restless dog, like when a dog's in labor and they like are pacing around the cage and panting and whatever. That's totally what I was doing. I was like just a complete primal mammal state. Like it was just so awesome. And so I finally get comfortable and I push her out. Well, at first, like only her head is out, and I'm chilling. I'm waiting for the next, wave to just go with my body and let her come out, on her own. And she all of a sudden starts kicking me from inside, and her head is like wiggling outside of my vagina. And Cole, my husband, is like, "Are you doing that?" And I'm like, "No, what do you think I'm doing? Kegels right now?" No, like that's her. And it was like she was just trying to kick her way out, like, let me ready to be in the world. And so she comes out. The cord was wrapped around her neck a couple of times. Cole just unwrapped it because I think all my kids had their cord around their neck. And so that wasn't like anything scary for me. And, I had...
Well, and it's so intuitive, like, just unwrap it. It's not like very complicated.
And those are the things like that. And I don't mean for anybody to take offense, because I was naive and clueless. I was there too. But like, those were the questions that we would get, like, well, what if the cord's wrapped around their neck? Totally. Or how are you going to cut?
Because that's the story. Cord? That's the whole, exactly.
Like, how are you going to cut the umbilical cord? And just all these things. It's like, you cut it, you unwrap it, just very like you just
it's
do
crazy because there's far more complicated parts to know about. And why are those always the things that everyone asks about?
Yes. And, they're like, well, what if the baby's breech? And it's like, you just push it out, like it's okay. Just all these things that, and that's why I just really guarded my space, my mental space, because I knew that these were things that were not taught to women. They were not taught to moms. It's just not a part of our culture anymore. But I was okay with that because I was there at one point too. Like I was, I
we
just
all
understood.
Were,
yeah, everybody was. And so that's why I had no desire to talk about our birth plan with anyone, because I knew what the conversation was going to be. And, I didn't have time for that at that point. I just wanted to focus on me, and my baby. But she came out and I held her in the water. It was a complete bloodless birth. And that was another thing. I was hoping that she could be born in call, because in all of my other births, they broke my water to speed labor up. And in this one, obviously I knew that wasn't going to happen. And I was like, that would be so awesome if she was born in call. And the photographer, she was like, did your water break? And I was like, obviously it did, but I don't know. But there was no blood in the water. It was crystal clear. I don't know what that means, but I didn't look into that. But I could tell the photographer was just like, wow, like, just kind of, because I'm sure that was the first unassisted birth or free birth she had seen. But probably I meant to point this out, like a week before she was born is when I found you on Instagram and started listening to your podcast. And that would be like my routine. I would put the kids to bed. I would go lay in bed and I just devoured every single podcast episode. And I was, this is what I have been searching for the whole time. Like, this is what I needed to hear. I needed to hear stories of other women who, and I would even venture to say that my pregnancy and birth like it was all very low maintenance. Like I never had health issues to deal with, nothing like that ever popped up. And hearing all of these women who overcame what, had they been in the hospital, would have been a huge medical issue or a huge medical intervention, or would have ended up in a C-section. Like that's what gave me confidence. And I mean, I probably listened to every single episode you had out at that point, and I just wanted more and more. I was just like, man, this is the world I want to live in,
and then you made it happen.
Yeah, I was just like, it was written in the stars. It truly was. So after she was born, we just kind of hung out in the tub for a little bit. It was only like 1:30 in the morning. It wasn't super late. My mom called my dad and she's like, hey, Mallory had the baby. You want to come see her? And he's like, what, already? Cause they live right next door. So he like came over and he's just like, you just had a baby. Like, you got a baby. He's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm getting bed. And so everybody left. Well, before that, I had gotten back in the tub to birth the placenta. And I was kind of feeling contractions, like to push it out, but it wasn't wanting to come out. And I had not learned a whole lot about that. So I didn't know, like I just listened to a podcast of yours a couple of days ago about how a woman's placenta didn't birth itself until 12 hours later. Like who knew that was possible? And so about an hour had gone by and the placenta had not come out yet. And I was starting to get a little bit nervous just because I wasn't familiar with how to handle that.
Sure.
And so I was like, hold on. And I just like pulled it out by the cord.
Totally.
I was like, I'm ready to get this thing out and relax. And so I pulled it out, put it on ice, put it in the fridge because I had planned on dehydrating it. And so we, cut the cord eventually. It was, completely white. I was excited because with all my other babies, it felt like a rush to cut the cord after they were born, and after learning why that is absolutely not okay. I try not to have like guilt for not making better choices with my other births, but it is what it is. It's the story that happened. So,
well, and I mean, I don't personally believe in guilt, but if like, I don't think there's ever like a good reason for it, but I would say it would be different if you learned better and then didn't do better.
Right.
Like that would be kind of the betrayal of self and of your intuition. But it sounds like every single experience you learned and you shifted and obviously, why would you have known that they weren't going to give a shit about your birth plan, because we expect this crazy idea of human decency when we go into the hospital,
crazy.
It's insane, and so I think it does take a second to be like, whoa, okay, everything society has told me about this system is not in my favor. Got it.
Exactly.
Like that's a big deal.
Yeah. And with each new thing I learned, it convicted me to my core. It was just like, there's no going back after that. There's just not. And so, yeah, we got in bed. We were on such a birth high.
I bet.
I have never experienced anything like that in my life. Like we were wired, just the adrenaline was pumping. Like we were just, that's why I said everything just seemed like it was in slow motion. It was just like time slowed down for us to be able to enjoy every single ounce of that experience. That's the only way I can describe it. Like everything was just so perfect. I had bought a scale and I had bought some little tinctures in case of like hemorrhaging or, anything like that. And, we weighed her. I had made a little birth chart thing to write down her measurements and all that, and we got in bed and just stared at her. We nursed. We were on a birth high, both of us. It wasn't just me. It was both of us. And, we finally went to bed. It was probably between 4 and 5. We like had to turn off the lights and be like, okay, we need to get to sleep because we have 3 other children that are going to be up pretty soon.
Totally.
Yeah. But it was so cool because it was like Christmas morning for the kids. Like they woke up kind of one by one and came in bed and, because they knew what was going to happen. And I was okay with them being there depending on what time of the day she decided to come. But, it just so happened it was in the middle of the night. So it was like a surprise. They like walk in and they saw the birth tub and like everything with, which they had helped us set up the birth tub. They were very involved in the whole process, but, they like creep up in our bed and it's like, oh my gosh, I have a sister. Like it was the best thing. It was so awesome. And, by the time all of them had woken up, we kind of just snuggled in bed for a little bit and, everybody was getting hungry. So we made our way to the living room. I just sat on the couch with Cully. Cole made coffee. He put cinnamon rolls in the oven. The kids are just like oogling over Cully. Like it was better than any Christmas morning. It was so awesome. My parents ended up coming back over. And, my mom, she just kept like over and over. She was like, I just can't get over how calm that was. That was just amazing. Like that's all she could say. But it was just so cool.
What a gift.
Yeah. The placenta, my original plan was to dehydrate it. I had bought, an encapsulation kit and I had a dehydrator and all that, but I was on the fence between doing it that way and then like I guess it's the traditional Chinese medicine way where you just like steam it and eat it raw. And that's what I ended up doing. And part of it, I just didn't feel like going through the process of encapsulating it. I was just like, whatever, I'm just going to cut it up and just put it in my smoothies. And it was a godsend. I had so much energy. Like I didn't experience an energy dip. I slept so much better. Nursing went so much better. Anyone who's comfortable with it, I would totally recommend eating your placenta. It was definitely a good decision for me. And I just cut it up in small little pieces. And every time I would make a smoothie, I would just put one in, came and taste it. But
yeah. And I would even add, if you are going to just go the smoothie route, there's no need to steam it. You can just.
I did.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, I don't think I did. But yeah, awesome. We just had a baby and
exactly.
lives. Like nothing was interrupted. There was no transition. There was no hospital hangover. There was no follow-up appointments. I didn't have to, the only thing I had to do in Florida, there's like a home birth packet that you have to fill out, which is basically all the paperwork that the hospital and doctors fill out. You just do it. And I had to take her into the health department to turn in my paperwork. And then also so they could witness that I, in fact, birthed a child and that she is alive and mine. But I mean, other than that, it was, we just went on with our lives. We had a baby and lived happily ever after.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing and I can't wait to share some of your gorgeous birth photos. They're really, really something.
Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you for what you do. I've watched just your whole movement grow from, like 5,000 followers on Instagram to what it is now and just what you're creating, this whole birth keeper school. I'm so excited. This is what the world needs. The world needs this. Women need this.
Yeah. I mean, we need all of it. All of us are doing this, doing our contribution to it. And it's so incredible. It's like such a continuum of the healing that we're bringing to this planet to live in our truth and birth in our truth and to talk about it. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story today.
Thank you so much for having me on.
And that's it for today, my sisters. Check out everything we do, including one-on-one and group coaching, learn about our private membership, in-person retreats, and more on freebirthsociety.com. Our online courses are on freebirthsocietycourses.com, including our flagship course, The Complete Guide to Free Birth. Don't miss the Radical Birthkeeper School if you're ready to become the authentic midwife that women are searching for. Together we rise, and the revolution starts inside each of us. Our opening song is by Shyla Ray. And now, I'll leave you with our Free Birth Society theme song, Wild Woman by Aruba Red.
I honor you for the wisdom you held, the ancient traditions of plant medicine and womb magic. I feel the spirit of the ancestors as I place my hands upon my belly. This sacred portal will be honored. Eons upon light beams of survival, withstanding the eradication of our power by design. I will not allow the separation of our young to be forced upon me. My sisters will no longer birth in captivity. The picket line redefined from burning our wild women to paralyzing us and drugging our babes. Strapped down in a clinical white bed, drying up the milk from our breasts. Keep your needles. My family will never again be doomed to chase those dragons or your poison. We reject your fear. We choose love. Everything with intention. Death, ascension. I will fly and bring her back